Hola amigos, ¿qué tal? Stuart here from Spain Speaks. Today with the first podcast that we're going to be doing. Normally I've just been putting out videos about my experiences here in Spain, but I've decided to go into the podcast format, and I'm joined today by John, who is another long-term resident here in Spain. 20 years, I think, John, more or less?
It is 20 years, 21 years next year.
21 years in Spain. So we're going to be talking about some of our experiences over those 21 years, some of the things that we have done to survive in Spain for such a long time, because it is a long time, right?
It's a long time, and it's something that I wasn't expecting to do as well. So I'm not your typical tourist or typical Brit that comes over to Spain to live in the hot weather on the coast. It's a very different story for me. So I've had to adapt to the country and adapt to the way of life, and also to my surroundings, which aren't what I had in the UK. So.
No, completely different, I suppose.
Very.
So what brought you to Spain in the first place?
Well, my career in the UK started off very, very quickly. By the time I was 21, I was already general manager of a 10-pin bowling centre. So I was extremely young. Held the liquor licence in the bar and the bowling centre, obviously, as well, and everything. So basically, I started off with quite a stressful life, working a lot of hours, 7 days a week often. And I had an opportunity after about 4 years of doing this to go to Mallorca. Work for 8 months in Mallorca. I was offered a job there, and still returned back to the UK with the same job. In fact, it would have been a promotion when I got back to a bigger site. But I arrived in Spain. My very first day in Mallorca, I met my now wife. We got together. Obviously, after 6-8 months, you don't know where that's going to lead to in the future. So I decided to stay on because I'd already fallen in love, and she agreed to stay in Mallorca as well for more time, and it just went from there.
And there was no talk of going back to the UK?
We did actually try to go back to the UK after a couple of years. Unfortunately, I chose probably the worst time of the year to go back. We landed on the 1st of December, so we went through the worst part of the English winter, plus Christmas with my wife away from her family and friends, and after about 4 months she was like, yeah, that's not going to happen. So we ended up coming back.
So at the end of the day, you were the one who had to make that Christmas sacrifice, let's say, to have to go back every year at Christmas time. And
very much so. I mean, at the beginning it was impossible. I went back when I could.
Yep.
We certainly didn't come back at Christmas because we just couldn't afford the flights at Christmas time, and things. They do get extremely expensive around Christmas. Yeah, I mean, you still get EasyJet and things, but unless you book it well in advance, if you're going around the holiday season, the prices are always going to go up high. So I wasn't earning a great deal of money when I first got here, and I couldn't afford to go to England at Christmas. So we used to go back during the bank holiday days at the beginning of December, and we'd go back to England and we'd celebrate Christmas literally for 3 weeks before Christmas with all my family, and then come back here and have Christmas here. So.
Because Spain does have those public holiday or bank holidays, as you said, at the beginning of December, right? I think the
6th and 8th of December are the bank holidays.
A couple of holidays there, that's right.
Obviously, a lot of companies also create what they call the puente, the bridge, which means you often get the 6th, 7th and 8th off of work, which gives you a good opportunity to go. It's still actually a little bit more expensive to go back to England at that time, because a lot of Spanish people also take advantage of those dates and travel. But it was definitely cheaper than Christmas.
Had you heard of that puente concept before you came to Spain, where you have a holiday in the middle of the week and you take the Monday and the Tuesday as well, or the Thursday and the Friday?
That was completely new to me. I had no idea that even existed. In the UK, when we have a bank holiday, it's never actually fixed. We're not normally fixed on a specific date. So, for example, May Day is the first Monday of May.
But
but it's always on the Monday.
Yeah, they're normally always on a Monday or a Friday, right?
Exactly. So we don't have the concept of the puente. So.
No, okay, good. Or the aqueducto, which is the other one that they talk about, with the longer one.
The longer one with a couple of days in between.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, those are important days here in Spain. That type of holiday, because being a tourist country, everyone goes to the coast or they go somewhere, and the tourist industry really loves those that type of holiday.
Oh, definitely. I mean, we live in Madrid now. I spent three years in Mallorca first, and I eventually caved and came to Madrid because my wife's from Madrid. And I just couldn't believe the bank holidays during Christmas and the bigger bank holidays, the puentes as well. In Madrid, it's like an exodus. It's just all of a sudden the whole city empties and everyone disappears to the coast for the weekend or to the countryside, to the mountains. So it's quite a funny sort of sight to see, really.
Yeah, well, it's an exodus every weekend.
Yeah.
As well, and bank holidays and every weekend people just try to escape the city, which probably says something about the city, actually, that it's a fairly stressful Monday to Friday, and people just want to get out and go to their village or their town or wherever on the weekends, right? Because they live in a flat or a little box somewhere in the city, and they want some space.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a country bumpkin. I grew up in Stony Stratford in Milton Keynes, and Stony Stratford's a very old town, a lot of history. We've got all countryside, little villages on one side of the town, and the other side of the town we've got the city of Milton Keynes. So I kind of grew up with the best of both worlds, but I didn't have to live in the city. And Milton Keynes isn't a huge city. We've got a population of about 300,000. So it's not a massive city. When I got to Madrid, I've got to admit I was a fish out of water.
Too big?
Too big for me. Too busy. Too big and too busy. I hated the traffic of having to travel in the traffic. I quite enjoyed the metro, I've got to admit, the underground. The metro system's very good. It's quite new compared to others, especially compared to London. And I enjoyed travelling it, I do admit. But leaving your house in the morning, especially I had a flat and I grew up in a house, so I always had a garden, and with the countryside next door as well. I spent most of my youth out near the river, playing football on grass, and here all of a sudden it's just all concrete and people and cars everywhere. Very
urban.
Yes, yes.
And where you live now, obviously here 20 kilometres away from the centre, you're able to find a bit of open space, a bit of not much greenery, but open space, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, we worked extremely hard for the first few years in Madrid and saved up as much money as we could. And eventually I actually bought a house in a small village 50 kilometres from the centre of Madrid. And that was great. It was a detached house in a nice little village of about 1,000 people, with views across a little valley, lots of green trees, lots of greenery around. And that was great, but it was a little bit too far away and a bit too isolated. It's not the same as living in a village in the UK. So now we live 20 kilometres from the centre. We're in Rivas. It's got about a population of about 85,000 people now. And
it's grown a lot.
It's grown an awful lot. But it's still got its parks. It's got the countryside nearby. I've got a little lake nearby where I can go and have a fish or walk the dog. And I enjoy that. I enjoy being out in the fresh air more than anything else. And I now have a garden as well, which makes life easier.
But the Spanish countryside has nothing in common with the greenery that you get in Stony, for example.
Not here.
If you go to the north, obviously.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Madrid is just, if you go to the countryside here, it's very, it's a desert-like countryside, to try and describe it in one way. There's not much grass or small plants around, really. It's mainly trees. So you see a few trees around. They're normally short trees, what I call short trees, really. Whereas if you go to the UK, you've got very tall, big, bushy trees, very green, lots of greenery around. It's very sort of yellow and brown sort of colours most of the summer, which is not what I'm used to.
No, it's a very, very dry place here for probably 6 or 7 months of the year. So it is a bit of a change from what you're used to. For me, change with, well, obviously I have the disadvantage that I'm just so far away. You know, I just can't get back as often as you could. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
if you wanted to go back for a weekend, you know, it's a lot more feasible, let's say. I mean, for me, it's almost impossible to do. And so for me, yeah, the first few years were a bit of a culture shock as well. You get used to it, you know, you work hard, and you Monday to Friday goes fairly quickly, and then you start to get used to things as well. And it's easier when you've got a Spanish partner, I suppose, to get some things done for you that, you know, that you probably wouldn't be able to get done yourself.
Yeah, we've got quite a good relationship in that way. We work very well as a team. I'm not very good with the administrative type of things. In Spain, I speak fluent Spanish now. My grammar's not perfect, but I speak fluent Spanish.
Just on that, how long did it take you to? Because did you come here with language skills or not?
No, not Spanish. I'd learned German at school. I had a GCSE in German. It was a lower sort of grade, if you like. It's not very fluent, but I had the exam results for that, which I passed. And I'd learned a bit of French as well, but I had no Spanish whatsoever. We didn't have the option of Spanish in England at that time. Everybody learned French, and I just got to high school when they started offering other languages. And in my high school, it was German, which is what I took. So I got to Mallorca. Literally, I could count from 1 to 10 in Spanish and order up to 1 to 10 beers. That was literally all I knew how to say. And then I worked with Spanish people the first couple of months, but most of my colleagues in the hotel where I worked, they were nearly all Mallorquin. They have their own dialect there, so they spoke Mallorquin. And all of my customers were British. The hotel was 100% British. So I only learned vocabulary, and that was through my wife and her friends when we met at night time every now and again, often in very noisy bars. So it was just vocabulary. Yeah. And then it sort of hit me hard when I got to Madrid, and that's when I pretty much got fluent and I could speak and understand everything within 6 months.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was straight into it. It was, as I say, you get thrown in the deep end. It's literally what happened. I had to work. I worked in Sol for the first year and a half.
You working in a bar or something, was it?
I started selling tickets for tourist buses in the middle of Sol, which actually was very good for me. I spoke a lot of Spanish, what I could to the Spanish people. I sold a lot of tickets because anyone that heard me speak English was like, oh my God, there's someone who speaks English. And then any Spanish people heard me, they were like, oh, that's really funny. There's an English guy trying to speak Spanish. So it attracted people from all over the place, and I sold a lot of tickets. I did do very well there. And then I got a job in a pub. I was the landlord or the manager of a pub, for an Irish pub, just off of Sol. I was there for about 6 months.
Yeah, just in case people don't know, Sol is the bang in the centre of Madrid, right? It's the main tourist area.
Yeah, it's actually got the kilometre zero, which is where they measure all of the radial roads that go out from Madrid to all the other parts of Spain.
So every road starts in Sol.
The kilometre distance markings that you see on the roads start from the kilometre zero. So obviously the motorways don't finish in Sol. So you have the A3, for example, goes from Valencia through to Madrid. And when it gets to Madrid, the actual motorway stops at Conde de Casal. But the kilometre marker is from kilometre zero in Sol.
Yeah, so when you see, let's say here, so which is, I think we're 19 or something.
That's
here,
correct,
are we?
yeah.
So that's 19 from here to Sol.
Exactly,
which is the centre of Madrid, let's say. I don't think it's the centre of Spain. I think the centre of Spain is down here in San Cristobal, I think. Did you know that?
Yeah. No, it's the centre of Madrid, basically.
Yeah, centre of Madrid, yeah, that's right. So, an interesting experience. How would you rate your career, if you can call it a career, your work experience, your time working in Spain?
It's been a bit of a roller coaster, to be honest. At the beginning, I just took whatever jobs I could. So I was on the tourist bus tickets. I was managing a pub, and then out of pure chance, I was asked to help a company. It was a British company that had started selling products in Spain to gymnasiums. It was all audio and visual equipment. and they needed someone who could speak Spanish in the centre and move around Spain. And it just so happened that they found me, offered me a job, and I started working for them. Unfortunately, that company actually went bust 2 years later in the UK, which meant the Spanish section had to close as well. But through the contacts I got from the work there, I was offered jobs with companies like Life Fitness. We've got Precor, Technogym, not so much, but a few other big companies that deal with the gym equipment. They offered me some self-employed work, fixing machines and putting machines together when they sold new machines to new gyms. And that was it was very good for a couple of years, but it was self-employed. So I could be earning or invoicing €3,000 in December, and then you get to July and August, everything just dies. And I was actually paying more money out in July and August than what I was receiving.
Yeah.
Because I had no work, but I still had to pay the self-employed rate.
Oh, you were
tax.
on that self-employed scheme back then as well.
Exactly. So I was paying €300 per month to be self-employed, but in Spain it doesn't matter whether you've earned any money or not. You still have to pay that money. So it cost me a lot of money, and I couldn't stop being self-employed for a couple of months because I still had a few bits and pieces going on.
Yeah, actually, that's one of the biggest complaints people have about that system, that even when you're not working, so if you do get a couple of months where there is no work, and even when you teach English, which is what we do now, you as well, those months where things do drop off, because in July and August things do drop off. I mean, people's mentality changes completely here as soon as the weather starts to warm up. They're just not thinking about work or education or anything. They're thinking about it that they go into holiday mode.
Yeah.
And you have to keep on. Well, you don't have to keep on paying it, but to go on and off is a bit of an inconvenience, and you still have to pay that 280 or something, or 300, or whatever it is that we pay.
Yeah, it's a difficult situation. This year I changed a little bit what I did. I work from September until May with fixed classes, so I have classes actually done from my house. All self-employed, so obviously I can give invoices to everyone, etc., and I obviously have to pay all the taxes and everything. And then basically what happens in June in Spain, the schools have a shorter timetable. They actually finish around about 1 o'clock, 1:45.
Yeah, like a summer timetable.
Yeah, and obviously that disrupts the children's routine and the parents'
But that's
routine.
only if the kids don't have lunch at school.
Well, even if the kids have lunch at school, they still finish at 3, whereas normally they'd be leaving the school at 4:30. So what happens is the classes that would normally start and have been starting from September till May, when they finish the school earlier, but they have their English classes at 4:30, they've got this gap, and that gap of an hour and a half, 2 hours, isn't always what the parents want. So in June, I probably have maybe, if I'm lucky, 15% of my classes.
15%?
Yes, 15%. It goes from 24 classes down to about 3 or 4. It's very low. So it makes life very difficult for the summer. You have to think about the summer. You have to save money every month to cover your summer period. And then in July and August I have nothing at all. There's no work at all in July and August. There's no classes. So I actually come off of the self-employed scheme this year during those 2 months, and it's fine. It wasn't a big issue. I used a gestoria, like an accountant's type administration firm, and they did the work for me, but you're not paying into the system for those 2 months as well, which also affects your retirement and your pension later in life. So it's not something that I want to continue to do. I would like to be able to earn enough money so that I can still keep paying into the system in July and August, even though I'm not earning any money, and not have that issue in future life.
Yeah, because as you said, your pension is dependent on that, right?
Yes, exactly. And if you don't pay in, you don't get out.
So so it's been an interesting 21 years, let's say. The experience in general, John, more positive than negative?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I love the Spanish people. I love their concept of family, the family life. There's a lot of very good positives that come out of Spain. I couldn't honestly tell you if it's a better place to live than the UK, or if the UK is a better place to live than here. There's so many pros and cons, and they're so different, the two countries, that you really have to live the experience to see. And it depends on the sort of things you like, the sort of life you have, your family, to whether it's a benefit to you or a negative. And to me, it's been both.
Yeah. So you've had your ups and downs.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I think everybody goes through those ups and downs, especially. I mean, I always say that you can have the same experience as living at home. You know, some days you're good, some days you're bad. You know, some days the UK or England's the best country in the world. Some days it's the worst. You know, and the same thing happens here. But of course, you know, when you're living in a foreign country, sometimes you can look for that foreign country excuse. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, exactly.
To blame everything on the country or the lack of opportunity. Sometimes you can also put it down to that. But I agree with you that in general, you know, it's been a fairly positive experience. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been here for so long, I suppose. But how do you, as an Englishman here, how are you treated by the Spanish? You said that, you know, the Spanish are great people, have a good time, etc. You feel that they treat you okay, or do you get some of the typical stereotypes pop up every now and again?
I mean, in general, the Spanish people treat me really well. Most of the time, I mean, because I speak fluent Spanish, they don't really treat me any different to anyone else. The stereotype does grind on me a bit sometimes. They see you as British and automatically, you must love beer, you must be a bit of a hooligan, and I think they get a very, very bad concept of the normal British people because of the tourism in Spain. And I find that as a horrible stereotype, because if you imagine the amount of tourists that come over from the UK, you're talking millions of people every year. How many of those are actually bad people, bad tourists, the ones that get blind drunk all the time? It's not that great a percentage. And when you look at the problem with some tourism in Spain from the UK tourists, they're normally focused on certain areas. One fantastic example, which I lived and saw personally, was Magaluf in Mallorca. Absolute dive of a place when it was full of British tourists. Absolutely beautiful place, surroundings, everything, when it wasn't full of tourists.
But doesn't a place like Magaluf, don't they deliberately attract that type of tourist though, with cheap alcohol, cheap hotels, cheap food?
Precisely. This is the thing.
And the owners of those restaurants a lot of the times and bars, they're Spanish businessmen.
It's a big mix, actually.
Is it?
Magaluf is a big mix, but this is where I see two problems here. The first problem, the whole of Magaluf was sold as a cheap drinking experience, basically. So what did it attract? Did it attract families? No, it wasn't so many families. What it was a whole ton of really young people, the 18 to 30 range, which is what they sell it to, but mainly 18 to 20, 24-year-olds. Well, a lot of these people, they're going on their very first holidays. They've just started drinking. They're not used to drinking in great amounts. And then all of a sudden they're sold a holiday, which, no word of a lie, you could buy for £150 for a week's all-inclusive holiday.
150?
£150.
For a week?
For a week.
All-inclusive?
Yes. I mean, just 3 years ago, I was looking to go to Mallorca to visit friends, because we still have friends in Mallorca. And we were trying to get a package deal, or even just flights and then a hotel from Madrid.
It was cheaper from the UK.
And I found it so ridiculously much cheaper. We actually found the cheapest holiday we could find was around about €700 per person from Madrid. And that was the cheapest at the time.
And that was also all-inclusive?
Yeah, and it was in the summer. It was that might have been half board, actually.
Okay.
And it was in the summer. It was in the main summer period. But looking at the UK, I actually found it was cheaper for me to get an EasyJet flight back to the UK and then buy a package deal from the UK to Mallorca.
The cost from Madrid to Mallorca was 4 times more expensive.
Exactly. It was going to cost me about £245, so it was about, maybe at the time, maybe about 275 to 300 euros per person from the UK, with the children free.
Children free
from the UK, because they were under 12. There was an offer with the children free. Now, all of these come from the deals that the Spanish hotels had made with the tour agents in the UK.
Yeah.
So where the problem arises, the Spanish hotel sells the whole hotel to the UK agent, and the UK agent obviously gets a really good price because they buy all the rooms for the whole season. Then they sell the hotel at the price they want to, but when it gets closer to the summer season, if they see that they've still got quite a lot of rooms left, they start reducing the price. And that obviously makes it a lot cheaper for people to go last minute. Then when you get to the resorts, all you find are really cheap bars, £1 a pint or €1 a pint for a beer.
How much do you pay for a pint of beer in Madrid?
If you go to the bars or the Irish pubs, for example, in the centre of Madrid, the cheapest you'll find a pint of beer would be around about €5.
Okay.
So you can imagine the difference. It's a big difference.
That's
but €5 is around about the same price as what I'm paying for a pint of beer back in my town.
Yeah.
So it's no different to the UK price.
But here for £1, you can get a pint.
In Mallorca, £1 for a pint.
Yeah, I think Benidorm's the same.
Yeah, and it's not all owned by British people. There's a very big mix. In fact, one of the places I used to frequent a lot when I was working there, they were all owned by Spanish people, the ones that I was visiting. Then you have some that have been sold to English people, and this comes to my second point of the problem. The second problem you've got is the amount of property, the amount of businesses that the Spanish government have allowed to be sold to foreign people.
So when you say foreign people, you mean
anyone from UK, Russian, German.
Oh, okay. So not only European Union, but also
there's a lot of Russian-owned properties in Mallorca as well. They may have passports, European passports. I don't know, but I know people that are Russian that own businesses in Mallorca as well. And that, I think, is a big problem.
So a massive sellout, basically.
Exactly. You're selling your country, basically, to other nationalities, which is all well and good at the beginning. You're receiving an enormous amount of money coming from other parts of Europe. There's a big boom. More things get built. But at some point, everything stops. And all of a sudden, a lot of these businesses and a lot of these bars, even hotels now as well, owned by people from the UK, from Germany. And obviously that then becomes very difficult to control which type of tourists you're bringing over. And if they're making money from the worst of the worst by bringing over drunks and people that just want to go and drink and get stupid because they don't care what their accommodation's like, etc., they're going to carry on doing it. Magaluf has taken a turnaround. It's actually improved. The council have wised up to the problem, and it has improved a lot. So there is a way around it, and Benidorm needs to start doing the same thing, I think.
Yeah, there's a lot of bad press here in Spain about especially the Brits. And every now and again, a couple of things pop up which really get under the Spanish skin, let's say. There was one a couple of months ago, or maybe at the beginning of August, I'm not sure, where a homeless guy in Benidorm had his forehead tattooed. Did you hear about that?
Yeah, I read that article. Disgusting. I mean, absolutely disgraceful from the people that did it. But again, you're going to get stupid people everywhere.
Yeah. So, but this is bad behaviour. Obviously, I'm not going to condone that behaviour. But the tattoo artist, should he have perhaps said, lads, come on, I think one of the problems also is that guy, the homeless guy, already had a tattoo on his forehead anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously they took advantage of a homeless guy, which they shouldn't have done in the first place, whether they had a tattoo or not.
They gave him a couple of £100 or something.
Yeah, I think it was 100. I don't think it was that much. I think it was €100 or something they gave him, which is nothing. But to a homeless guy, it's a lot. And well, it doesn't really matter if he's already got a tattoo on his head or not. When they were still abusing this homeless guy, but the tattoo artist, I think, is just as much to blame as the people that were paying for it.
Well, I can see here it says £90 to have groom's name on forehead. Or forehead, yeah. So, no, you're right. Jamie Blake, North Shields, NE28, that's what he wanted to put on the guy's head. So, yeah, they probably thought it was a bit of a laugh at the time. Drugs, probably a few illegal substances had been consumed as well, I presume.
I would imagine so. There's plenty of them in Benidorm.
Yeah, well, there's plenty of them in Spain in general. So that's obviously something that, highlights the see, I always get the impression, because obviously coming from Australia, you don't get the same there's not the same history that Britain and Spain have, but I do get the feeling sometimes that the Spanish press and the British press also can be a little bit anti-Spanish, and the Spanish press can also be a little bit anti-British, and when these things pop up, they really get highlighted.
They take advantage of it, and it saddens me because, as I say, I've never had any sort of ill feeling towards any nationality, really. In 2001, I founded a cricket club here in Madrid. The very first, it actually was the very first cricket club in Spain years and years and years ago, and I helped resurrect it in 2001. And we've got 14 different nationalities in our club.
14,
yes,
really?
It's crazy. From Afghanis to Indians and British people, obviously, all the way through to German, American, South African, everywhere. We've just had an enormous amount of nationalities, even Argentinian, and they don't even play cricket in Argentina. So, it's a huge eye opener for some people. They get to the club and all of a sudden they're able to connect and speak and learn about other cultures to these people, and I think it's a fantastic thing to do. And it really saddens me when two countries get this little niggling problem, and anything they can do, they just jump on the back of the other one. And obviously, I think a lot of the problems stem from history and still from Gibraltar. Gibraltar's obviously an issue there.
Well, obviously, you've on that cricket aspect. It hasn't been easy to convince people here in Madrid, at least, about the validity of cricket as a sport, right? To get facilities and a ground even, and
virtually impossible, actually.
Yeah.
Cricket is just unknown in Spain, really. You say you play cricket and people think you play polo, or they think you play croquet, and you think, that's not quite the same.
No, see, I've seen here, where we live here in Rivas, there's badminton clubs, there's softball, there's baseball, there's even American football.
Yeah.
And, all of these other sports have been given facilities and a ground to play, but cricket seems to hit a brick wall.
Yeah, there's
at least here. It's probably different, down in the...
On the coast, it's easier because of the expat
there's so
population,
many of them,
or the immigrant population. But and that's another subject that we can quite easily discuss, the difference between expat and immigrants. Is there one? But no, the population of the immigrants on the coast is obviously, it makes things easier to do down on the coast, and it also brings in a lot of tourism as well. And that's the hard thing to sell to the Madrid council, the councils here in different areas. We actually haven't asked for any money from anyone here in Madrid yet, and we're not planning on doing either. We haven't asked for anything for free either. We have asked for a piece of land to use, to rent, to pay money to use this ground, and we will actually pay to build the ground to the specifications of a cricket ground. How can we do this? Well, a lot of our members aren't very rich at all. In fact, we actually have quite a large number of students. We also have 2 refugees from Afghanistan who we sponsor. So we pay their match fees, we pay their membership, we buy their whites, the clothes that we use to play cricket. because we want to promote the sport here and we want to help as much as we can. How do we raise the money? We have a tournament every year. Where do we have the tournament? Not in Madrid, because we don't have a ground.
Yeah.
So we literally have to organise an international tournament in La Manga every year, and the money we raise from that tournament, half of the money goes towards, or a percentage of the money goes towards Madrid CC, and a percentage goes towards the charity of choice.
La Manga being in Murcia.
That's right, yeah, on the coast in Murcia. So we've been doing that for 12 years now, and you raise a few €1,000 every year, and we've managed to save €30,000 for our ground. But even with this, we're explaining to the councils that having a cricket ground would actually bring cricket teams over from all over Europe to play here. So you're filling hotels, you're using restaurants, more tourism in the centre as well. We're paying for the ground, we're paying rent, we're developing the ground. Even with all this information, it's still becoming impossible. The reason, one, I think it's a doubt that what we're saying is actually true. Although we can show what other cricket clubs have done, I think that's part of it. Lack of knowledge of what the sport actually is. And if you look at cricket, it's actually the second biggest sport in the world when you look at viewing numbers. Not sure about playing numbers, but definitely viewing numbers.
Because of India.
Pakistan, Bangladesh, the ex-colonies of the UK obviously have large populations. But it's played all over the world, but just in specific areas. It's played in West Indies, South Africa, New Zealand, Australia as well, of course, as well as the other Asian countries that we just mentioned. And now it's growing in Europe. You're getting some quite strong teams coming out of Ireland, Holland, even Germany now is getting a good team together. So it's hard for them to really understand a sport that's not played in their country hardly at all. When we started the club up in 2001, there were 8 clubs in the whole of Spain, us being one of those 8. When we finished the league last year, I believe we had 110 clubs. I mean, it's improved enormously. And it's improved enormously in Barcelona, in Catalonia. The Catalonian government have realised the potential of cricket.
Yeah, because of the, I'll just say, because of the Indian population.
Indian and Pakistani.
There's not many Catalans playing, I suppose.
They've got some playing. One of our ex-members is playing in a club there, and he's got a few people playing there that are Spanish. But no, it's very difficult to promote cricket to anyone until you've got the facilities to do so. So now the Catalonia government have given facilities or provided facilities for those clubs. They're actually growing faster. They're getting more publicity. And they're getting them out there. In Madrid, it's very difficult to do so.
Now we'll just move on to another topic here quickly, which is obviously the Brexit situation. A lot of the press at the moment we can see here. Brexit exodus, thousands of British expats living in Spain return to the UK. Expat exodus from Spain, thousands of Brits quit, and Brexit fears, etc., etc. I don't want to really, go into why Brexit happened. Obviously, there's a lot of different thought on the subject. But how is Brexit going to affect you, John, as an English person living here in Spain?
I think, to be honest, it's a very hard question to actually answer. I don't think anyone really knows how it's going to affect us at the moment.
This is the point. So it's been nearly 2 years.
Yeah.
And what do we know?
Virtually nothing. We know for a fact now that a lot of the campaigning with regards to Brexit was a lot of scaremongering. There were a lot of lies told by both sides as well. And I honestly believe that we've made the wrong decision in leaving. I didn't get a vote because I've been here for 15 years, more than 15 years at the time of the vote. I wasn't allowed to vote. But if I had voted, I would have voted Remain, obviously. I think it's the logical choice to stay in Europe. However, although I felt that Remain was the correct decision, and obviously I was very disappointed with the Leave vote, I do understand the people that voted Leave. For various reasons. One, some of the people that voted Leave did so because they were scared. They were told a lot of lies, a lot of scaremongering by the Leave campaign, and I think a lot of people actually were scared, and they voted Leave for that reason. Another reason, we've obviously always been a very different country compared to other parts of Europe. We're separated by water, it's an island. We've grown through the years and evolved through the years on an island, so we're still driving on the left-hand side of the road. We're still using our own currency, etc. And the reason for that is because of experience in the UK, what older people have experienced with the change of decimalisation. So I do understand why a lot of people wanted to leave. They also believe that we'll have more control over things such as immigration, which people have said have become a problem in the UK now. However, I think that's more of a government policy rather than anything to do with Europe. And that's been the main thing that people have been looking at: immigration, the scaremongering. I think all of that has really put pressure on people to vote Leave. So I do understand it, but I'm very disappointed.
And you hear a lot of, I suppose it is scaremongering now. I mean, every day you can read in the papers here that driver's licenses could be affected. Obviously, the residency situation, if there's no agreements. There's a couple of YouTube channels there that are also talking about the importing, the exporting of goods into the UK, the travel issues as well. All of those things. I mean, but as you said, nobody seems to know exactly what's going to happen, and you're not really getting any clear messages, are you, from either the Spanish government or the British government as to whatever.
As clear as mud, basically.
No. So the situation before, just let me try to get this clear, because I saw a video here on YouTube, and it was a woman. I've got it here, and I'll just see if I can find it. It says, "How I got residency in Spain as a freelancer." Now, this lady, apparently, I didn't watch all of the video, but she said that she managed to get residency in Spain. She showed her little piece of paper that she has here, and she said that she had to have £7,000 in her bank account, and she's a freelancer or something. Now, I understood that the European Union, you can come and live here without having to go through that process.
Exactly. I don't really understand what she's talking about there, to be honest. I came to Spain with €1,000 in my pocket.
Yeah. So maybe it's changed in those 20 years.
Obviously, yes.
I'm not sure, but what I understand that the European Union is that if you want to go and live in another country, you can do it. So here she says that she had to hire a lawyer. So she also had to have that money in her bank account. So obviously it's not that easy to move around the European Union if you listen to what Anna Glowinski says.
Yeah, it's very strange. I mean, I've heard stories of people that are coming here to live as retirees. People are retired, they come here to live, and I understand that they do have to have at least a minimum amount of money in the bank to help support themselves. They have to go through a process to get residency here as well. And that you can understand, because they're not going to become part of the working population. They're not going to be paying taxes here because they're not working and things. So you can understand that there's a process to that. But I was under the impression that the younger people, if they came here to work, they could get residency with the complete freedom of movement throughout Europe, can people going from Spain to the UK.
Yeah, that's what I thought. But apparently her situation is that she's not going to be working in Spain. She's going to be getting her income from the UK, but she wants to live in Spain.
Well, that then goes back to the point I made before about the people that are coming here as retirees.
That's the same situation.
Because if she's not working here, she's not paying any tax.
Yeah.
She's paying tax in the UK. But I also was under the impression that if you did come here to live and you got residency here, and you were working for a company in the UK or anywhere else,
whatever,
you had to then start paying tax over here. I think within the 6 months things change. I'm not really up to date with all these things because it doesn't affect me.
Yeah, no, it doesn't really affect me either. So that's the point. So if you reside in Spain for 183 days...
That's it, yeah.
it doesn't matter whether where your income comes from.
No.
You've got to pay tax here, right?
Yes.
So that's why I didn't really understand what her story was. I'll probably have a look at the whole video. I mean, we'll just have a look here at a minute and see what she says.
It's about how I managed to get my residency here in Spain as a self-employed person. So there's one way of doing it, which is by getting a job. Now that changes depending whether you're from the EU or not. And there's the other way of doing it, which is how I've done it. I've lucked in by still doing it before Brexit, and I was really focused on making sure that I got it done because nobody knows what's going to happen next. There probably wasn't too much of a pressure for me to need to have it because I go back and forth between England and Spain so much. I didn't really need to be a resident here at first, but because the climate is so changing and we don't really know what's going to happen, and because I also want to legally marry my boyfriend over here, then it was a really, really useful and important thing to do. Here's what you need to know. You need your passport, a lawyer, and a place to live, and £7,000 in your bank. So as I fully understand it is that I still pay my taxes to the UK because this is where I earn my money. What I think the government...
So that's the point. She pays a tax in the UK, but if you live those 183 days in Spain, which I presume she's going to do, she's going to have to pay tax here.
Yeah, I mean, I think people are actually taking the mickey when it comes down to living in Spain in many respects. You cannot expect to come to Spain, enjoy life in Spain, living in Spain, but earning money in the UK and paying taxes in the UK. Because if you're living in Spain, obviously, if you don't pay taxes, you're not contributing towards road care,
rubbish collection.
Rubbish collection normally gets paid through the
local taxes.
But other things, schooling, education, health system, everything. So if you're not living in the UK, and you're living in Spain, and you're paying taxes in the UK, you're basically cheating the Spanish people, which is wrong. And I completely understand why Spanish people will get upset about that. Completely.
Let's see. We'll just watch a little bit more and see what she says.
Here once is just to simply know that you're not going to come here, become a resident, suddenly become a burden to them. So they want to know that you are able to support yourself financially. And obviously, if they're not giving you any jobs, you need to provide your own evidence of that. First things first. I got a lawyer. If you want to find out who I used, she's in Malaga. Send me a message, and I'm happy to send you her details. She does only speak Spanish though, so it might be worth doing some Google searching into someone who specialises in residencies, who speaks English. And I've known people to get their residency in 3 weeks. It took me 5 months.
5 months to get your residency? I don't know. See, like I said, I had to go through a completely different process coming from Australia, and I don't have that European advantage. But it seems a little bit strange. It could be the case. I don't know.
5 months here in Madrid, I would imagine, is probably quite normal because you have to go through all the paperwork process and everything. So I mean, it could take that long. But I mean, so many things she just said there, which it just made me laugh because it's exactly what's wrong with this type of situation. First of all, they're not giving us jobs. So, well, no, they don't give you jobs. You have to go and get a job. It's like, I think the youth of today have got to a point where it's like the self-entitlement. I'm entitled to this. You're not. You work for it. You have to work for it. That's ridiculous. And then the second point, when she says, the lawyer only speaks Spanish, so there's, of course, she's Spanish. She lives in Spain. If you're going to come and reside in a country, the two things: either one, you get here and then you learn the language, and while you're here, you start learning the language. But if you're going to come here and you know you're going to live here, you should be learning the language. You should know.
Make an effort.
I mean, it's such a problem on the coast because people come here, they go to little British areas, and they don't learn any Spanish.
No.
But they're living in Spain.
And they're probably a little bit alienated.
Yeah.
Now, let's just see what else she says here, just quickly.
Don't know. Yeah, you probably could. But you either need to own a house or show that you're renting and basically show that you're not homeless. So I imagine it would be pretty hard if you're doing the whole van life thing to get residency here. So I brought my contract with me and I brought my passport and I registered myself for an empadronamiento. And that's basically just telling the local town of Torremolinos that I am living here with you in your town.
So it's a little bit complicated from what I can work out here with the empadronamiento, which is a difficult word to say, let's be honest. But so this is the type of stuff that we're going to be seeing all the time.
Yeah.
Because Spain is still going to be a desired destination for British people,
Yeah.
let's be honest. I mean, there's things here that you can't get in the UK, like the good weather, for example, especially in Malaga.
Yeah.
So people are going to be coming here. So, this type of video here, and she could be right. I mean, I have no idea how the system works, but it seems complicated that you have to go through all of this, theoretically still being part of the European Union, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, Spain's always been a bureaucratic nightmare, no matter whether you're English or Spanish.
Yeah, but we just saw a homeless guy from Norway or somewhere. I don't think he'd have a residency, right? But
No.
he's living in Spain, obviously, as a Norway European Union. I don't think it is, but he's come down. But he's come down here and he's living there, or Swedish, wherever he was from. And so I mean, there's just so much information. It's just so complicated to work out what's going on.
Yeah, you really need to pay a lawyer to get all this done, or gestoria. I mean, depending on what you're actually doing. But again, it's this the whole concept that people have of this exodus of people leaving because of Brexit, and why people come to Spain. Spain is a tourist destination. The coast of Spain is extremely popular with a lot of European countries, not just the UK, but extremely popular with the UK. Yes, and it's going to continue being so. I mean, I don't think there's going to be much changing because of Brexit in that sense. However, the reason that we've got so many people coming to live in the UK is because of the amount of UK tourists. It's not just, I want to live in the beach. People see an opportunity to open a business which is something that would attract the British tourists, and making some money from a new business venture in a different country, but also taking advantage of the weather and
all of those things,
and all those things as well. So basically, the whole concept of the exodus, I think, is a very mixed situation. I think that a lot of people are still returning to the UK because of the crisis. There has been an increase in tourism over the last couple of years, but it's maybe not enough to keep supporting these people that made a business when before the crisis hit. And there's still people leaving. I know people that are leaving Spain because of the crisis and because they literally can't support themselves.
Yeah, so that's it. We'll probably never get to the bottom of the situation or get any type of conclusion, but we'll see what happens over the next few months leading up to Brexit, and we'll see if the exodus does continue. So, John, I'll say thanks. We'll cut the podcast there short today. We'll be back next week, I think, right?
Yep, definitely.
And we'll chat about something else. We'll see what pops up over the next week or so. I'm sure that there'll be more information coming through about Spain and Britain and all of those things that we need to talk about. If you guys have got any questions that you'd like to ask us, just leave them in the comments section below. Give the video a thumbs up if you liked it. I'll say goodbye, John.
Goodbye.
Thanks for popping in today, and as I said, we'll see you again next week. To the viewers out there, like I said, give the video a thumbs up, and we'll see you in the next podcast. And you can hear us in the next podcast, of course, if wherever you are watching this, whether it be on Facebook, YouTube, or on the webpage. Hasta luego.